It's 2011 and the Arab Spring is raging. A lesbian activist in Syria starts a blog. She names it Gay Girl in Damascus.
Am I crazy? Maybe.
As her profile grows, so does the danger.
The object of the email was, please read this while sitting down.
It's like a genie came out of the bottle and you can't put it back.
Gay Girl Gone. Available now.
Hey friends, we're having a live event with PRX.
And we want you to join us virtually.
The PRX Big Questions Project presents
Making It, a night of big questions.
It's Tuesday, June 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Click the link in the show notes to register today.
There's no place like the Cube.
Let's do it again. Hey, I'm Darren.
And I'm Esther. And this is Second Sunday, a podcast about Black queer people finding, keeping, and sometimes losing faith.
We have a different episode for you today. This is a bonus episode.
Right, but before we get into it, we actually need to talk to all of you for a second. First of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to Second Sunday. We love all of the responses to the episodes, and we want to hear even more from you.
We want to know what you like about the show and what you'd like to see in future episodes. So we put together a quick survey. You can be done with it in less than 5 minutes. The link is in the show notes, in our Instagram bio, or go to secondsundaypod.com. We totally appreciate you doing that.
Okay, so today's bonus clip is from Dr. Lightsey's episode, which is called You Are Not an Outcast, God Loves You. During our conversation, she spoke a lot about her brother, and I chose this bonus clip because I think it's a really beautiful snapshot of what it was like being a Black, out, and proud man back in the day. Okay, let's get into the clips, and don't forget that survey.
And be sure to mark your calendar for April 24th when Season 2 of Second Sunday kicks off.
My brother was a musician, a very talented musician. He played many woodwind instruments. He eventually went into the military, into the United States Army. He was in the band. That was his MOS, to be a member of the band. But when he was younger, in high school, my brother and I, this is a time of disco music. So if you can imagine that. And this was a time of Soul Train. You know about Soul Train. So my brother and I, we would go. I eventually left my house too. Moved to stay with my sister because of the iron fist of my mother. And I stayed with my sister, and staying with my sister gave me more liberty than I had at my mom's house. And my brother would come over, and we would go partying on the weekends. So we partied from West Palm Beach, and we would make our way down south. We would go from West Palm Beach to Fort Lauderdale to Miami. And we would hit all the gay clubs, as many as we could in one night, you see. And my brother and I, we had practiced a routine. So we danced together on the floor. We tore up many floors dancing, he and I. We danced. And this Madonna and her Vogue stuff, that's old. That was old news because we had done all of this kind of stuff, during the disco era. We would dance and saw some lovely folk. And we put on a show, and we also love to just play around with folk. In the queer community, there's a word called reading somebody. That's a kind of play with words, but it's also very serious if you're angry. And my brother was good at reading folk. And he was a flaming gay man. So we would enter a store like 7-Eleven, and the cashier would, late at night, we would go in 7-Eleven and say, the male cashier would say, "How are you all doing?" And my brother would walk in flaming, just like the doors open only for me kind of style. And my brother would say, "Oh, I'm fine as I look, honey. Fine as I look." And just, we walk around the little 7-Eleven, get what we need, get into the car, and then we would cruise down these these streets there, where prostitution was going on and drug selling was going on and trades were out there, as my brother would call these men who were on the down low. And my brother would pull over and talk to a couple of them. My brother was fearless. And he would flirt with men up and down the street. And I'd be in the car just laughing myself. Oh, I would be laughing because my brother was so grand and so audacious and so out at a time where you would think it would be dangerous. But we lived in a community where gay men were out and proud, where we had a trans woman, a Black trans woman by the name of Miss Felock, who's out and proud. Miss Felock told one, we would just laugh and laugh. Miss Felock told one man, he tried to, talk against her. He was walking across the street and I forgot what she said, but he tried to really be verbally abusive to her. And she said, I don't know if I can say this on your broadcast, but it stuck with me. Miss Felock stood up, snapped her fingers and said, look, I will drown your dick in the sea of Don't fuck with me today. Woo, that's the kind of reading that went on in my community, you see. And so I grew up, one would think that, okay, how could you grow up under these conditions? How could you be happy? But it's that kind of joy. And so I went from that kind of joy to a conversion experience, which distanced me from my brother and into kind of like the meanness of the church because, everything was so Jesus is coming back and you don't know the day nor the hour and you don't want to go to hell, kind of fear and trembling. A great bit of difference from the joy that I experienced with my brother and with my sister and with my friends. Yeah, the conversion experience was an experience that made me feel great joy, but it was a different kind of joy. And I missed the joy of my neighborhood. So the church took me from that kind of communal joy to a very narrow and limited community that existed within the confines of a church. Everything was about the church. You go to church, you go to work, you come home, you get dressed, you go to Bible study, you're in church. You go to bed. You don't listen to anything but gospel music. You don't go to the movies. You don't wear makeup. You don't wear, if you're a woman, you don't wear pants if you're a woman. Everything is within these boundaries that are so constricted and all for the goal of trying to get to heaven because you don't know when Jesus is coming back. And you don't want to be left here. You don't want to be left here and Jesus is coming. The rapture has taken place and you don't make it into the rapture. So that's a kind of major differences that took place. We reconciled to the extent that I could reconcile with my brother. My brother always knew that I loved him. Even after I exploded on him, I called him from Germany to see how he was doing. I said, how you doing? And his name was Daryl. He went from Daryl to being called Miss Dee Dee. We called him Dee Dee that was his nickname, and he added Miss Dee Dee to it later on. So I would call him up and say, Dee Dee, how you doing? Oh, girl, I'm sitting here just smoking this weed. I'm doing all right. So even there he was happy with his lot in life. And here I was, a sour Christian, basically blowing his high, trying to get him to be converted. But I also want to say that my brother was very much a part of the church to the extent that the church allowed him to be. The church used my brother. And I want to be clear, my brother was a musician. My brother was in charge of the music department at his Baptist church in Atlanta. My brother was the minister, was the one, he wasn't a minister of music, he directed all the music. He directed the musicians. He ensured that the church had the proper sound system because my brother was a bit of a geek there. He could build a sound system, which he did. And so my brother was in church more than I was in church growing up. And later on, he continued to go to the church. But the church, he could participate in the church to the extent that the church enjoyed his expertise and his skills and what he had to offer. But my brother wasn't accepted. My brother was like many LGBTQ persons in our churches. As long as he didn't say anything, he was all right, And that's a shame on you to the church. My brother died, and I went to that church that he had been a member of. And members of that church were still quiet about the way that my brother died. It was like, they want to talk about it quietly. It was very shameful. My brother loved the church as much as many other LGBTQ persons love their church. And no matter how ugly and how homophobic that church was, that was my brother's church. And his community was within the choir. So he made their subsets in any church, And the choir those were his people. And he was satisfied with those people. So no, he didn't, he had nothing negative to say about his church. I, as a theologian, have plenty to say about his church. Whereas he was quiet, I'm not. I have plenty to say about the Christian church and its homophobia and its traumatizing of the LGBTQ community.
The Second Sunday podcast is hosted by Esther and Darren Calhoun. But podcasting is a team sport, so a big thank you to our dream team.
Our producers, Esther Ikoro, Anna Deshawn, and Nicole Hill. Our associate producer, Amber Walker.
Our sound designer, Florence Burrow-Adams, and our managing producers, Jocelyn Gonzalez and Courtney Florentine.
Our opening theme song is Maya B's original track titled They Don't Know. You should download the full song today. To learn more about today's guests or the show, visit our show notes.
Second Sunday is a production of The Cube in partnership with the PRX Big Questions Project, which is generously supported by the John Templeton Foundation and produced by PRX Productions.
The Cube is your #1 curated platform to discover the best BIPOC and QTPOC podcasts.
Support this show and more like it by joining the Cube app and follow the Cube across social media at the Cube app.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next episode.
From PRX.